So we're on the sidelines of PLF 2023 and we have Rashmi Samant here. Rashmi, how do I introduce you? Young author, young upcoming star. What's your bio right now? Author. So we have author Rashmi Samant here. So actually you need no introduction at this point because people know you as the young celebrity right now.
That's very kind of you to say, but
I really want to talk about how you have sort of emerged in this space as a young author. So what is your story?
Well, for me, I think I was that typical naive young girl who didn't have anything to do with the way the world lived. And, it was pretty much self-centered, all about me, my goals, my place in life. Things happened to me, and I think I was forced to take charge of my life and define my space in the world before the world kind of overran and made me its newest victim. So I think that was more of survival instincts kicking in for me. And the pathway, surviving is what brought me here. It brought me to being an author. It brought me to have a sizable audience, a community who love me, who support me. I think that's been the journey. It's of a literal naive person who didn't have anything to do with things, and then things come knocking down. I think it's also an indictment of the fact that we keep repeating that don't wait for things to come to your doorstep, right?
Yeah.
Every time there's a social problem that the community needs to deal with together, people don't often engage because they think it can never happen to them. I'm prime example of one such people who thought it can never happen to me, and that I'm the last person who's going to be victimized or persecuted or, witch hunted or bullied or harassed in any way whatsoever. And it still happened to me. Reinforcing that value that it does not require for you to be a certain category. It doesn't require you to be vocal about your rights.
Yeah.
Just having your identity, being proud about it out there, on your own is sufficient for the wolves to come looking for you.
So then when you started out in Oxford, you never thought this would be a problem or an issue that you would face at any point?
Yeah,
even when you got into the student politics of Oxford,
yes,
it was never something that occurred to you.
It never occurred to me because I think primarily because of the biased media we have out there. Yeah. There have been many cases like this before as well. There's been one student union president at the Brandeis University in America who went through similar things.
Yeah.
And there have been multiple people who've been going through such things, but it never makes it to mainstream media or discussion. There's always one obscure paper that keeps a small article about it, and that's about it.
And why was your case different, or what made it different?
I think the scale was different in this case, and I think it also comes from the positioning of Oxford in the scheme of things across the world. Oxford being ranked 1 in the world with the kind of socio-economic political capital it brings, being the alma mater of the highest number of politicians in the world. I think that brings that sort of gravitas, and anything that even happens microscopically there gets sort of micro-analyzed by everybody across the world. So there's this amplification which happens gradually, naturally, when it's the University of Oxford. So I think that was primarily A. And B, I think it was not one of these cases where accusations were he said, she said, happened behind doors. Everything was out and out in the public. Whatever people were saying against me, my faith, my ancestry, and they were stereotyping and vilifying me, it was all put and written out for the public to see. So I think the public really could take a stance in this case. In most cases, what we see is that it's just two accounts, it's his word against hers or her words against his. But this was not something like that, it was just everything was out and out. Everything was out in writing. So people could literally see why things are going wrong and make an opinion for themselves and pick sides.
So what was the university stance in all of this? How did you deal with the university stance, and what do you have to say about the fact that, this is considered to be number one, and, the place where all of this, you described it as the political capital of the world, sort of moves out of and all that. So, how does it reflect on a place like that?
Well, I think for the initial few months at least, I was very happy that I'd made it to the #1 university in the world, and that, this was it for me. Career-wise, achievement-wise, everything. But I think in the run-up to the election, I'd actually realized that a lot of the things here were grey and that they were shady. From the past, colonial past that they had, from the amount of hiding they were doing, and the amount of parading that happened, and this moral high ground that they tried to pick by saying that colonization was an extremely positive experience for the colonized.
So is that what
them.
Is that the stance that the university has had, or is that the stance that the university sort of puts out academically as well?
What do you say if there are statues of slave owners on every street? You have Cecil Rhodes being, put up there. You have Codrington in the central part of the library, Christopher Codrington. What does it say about the university?
That's a message
it's a message that's sent out. And I mean, I still remember reading a study by one of the scholars there. They said that the Bengal famine was because of the Hindu Mahasabha, and it was not because of Winston Churchill's policies. So the academia is actively using funds there to try and whitewash colonial crimes. We all know why Bengal famine happened. Because of the sort of hoarding that was happening, and because the way Winston Churchill looked at India and the policies dictated.
This was openly their policy.
It's open. But there are still people who are trying to prove otherwise academically. So that clearly shows, it clearly showed me that this was not it. And I think mostly my presidential platform was about decolonizing the syllabus, thinking, because I had the power to start a consultation as a trustee to the board, as the union, president of the union. So it came with a lot of powers, with a huge budget. And, that was what I set out to do. And this experience of being, literally stereotyped, vilified, persecuted, kicked out, forced out, not kicked out, forced out, reinforced my, idea of how these people just masquerade to be holier than thou. And that their position in this world as the #1 university is their own making. They've decided to set up the parameters that make them #1. It's almost as if, you shoot an arrow and then decide this is going to be, and then you make the mark. Not shoot at the mark, rather. So I think that's the sort of unfairness that we're all against. But it's unfortunate that these things don't make it to mainstream discussion. In fact, I hadn't heard the word Hinduphobia or anything at all until days after I saw that post in which the prof said, the history faculty of the University of Oxford said, Oxford's not ready for a Hindu president. I still didn't know it was some kind of a Hindu hate or some kind of a, hatred towards a particular polytheistic faith. I didn't know that because these things never make it to the mainstream.
So, can you recount for us how you dealt with this? Because I remember you telling me that, actually they've today admitted to the mistake that they've made. I think they had to admit it on an official platform. Yeah.
So I basically, I had to resign because there was an active threat to life and all of the situation. And then, but I didn't stop fighting. I filed a complaint with the police. There was an internal investigation in the university where they tried to drag their feet, literally, weeks on end. They're like, okay, we are on leave or whatever, as if, it's just. And every time the public pressure built up and there was a new person from India or the global space who mattered writing a letter to the university seeking accountability, they would then suddenly wake up and everybody would be back in office for a week. And then when the pressure died down, they would all go back. But then they were finally forced to admit that there was some sort of a wrongdoing. But they put this confidentiality clause in this letter that they sent me. They never came out in any official platform either admitting anything or even taking back anything. Everything was happening. Let people, do what they want to do. So they allowed people to have their perceptions. They allowed people to come after me despite having, responsibilities towards their student. And even when they admitted that, something went wrong and that a member of the university staff was out of line, they sent it with a one-way confidentiality clause. I'd never signed a confidentiality clause, but there's something in the UK where you can say, okay, this letter is confidential and it's a one-way thing that gets imposed when you send it to someone. And I kind of waited it out until I got my degree, but I think now I don't care. Really about what they do think or do not think. I think the truth needs to be out there. And I'm glad that at least few corrective measures were taken as a fallout of that. And now there is a serious, framework and regulation on staff actually going after students, and that there's a line that you can't go stalk them, their parents, and then harangue them for where they come from and what their identity is on a public platform. So I think they put in those measures. They did admit to wrongdoing, and then the person responsible is also no longer, in any form or shape associated with things like these. So I think that was good. But again, that never made it to the mainstream is another, I think, problem. We don't put out these stories out there because we do need to, because we need to tell people that if you fight it out, that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that these things happen for these reasons, and this is how you deal with it. Nothing of this sort ever makes
So
it.
what is the kind of impact that you want your book to have, especially let's say on a youngster who's considering to go abroad to a place like Oxford to study? Yeah.
Well, it's not an act to discourage people from going out. I believe that exposure is necessary. But I believe that they need to really value where they come from, and that they need to have that sense of privilege that, that they do come from a superior civilization, and that things in this country are great. They don't need to believe this mainstream narrative that everything in India is bad, and that, achievement is only to be had abroad. So I want to give that perspective and that open their minds to these things, because nobody did that for me. For me, it was very straightforward. As a product of the Macaulay education system, it was very straightforward that, okay, go abroad, that's where life is, and that this degree is the best. But I kind of want people to open up more to the fact that, of course, plenty of opportunities are to be had here as well. And if at all they get marginalized in the way that I did, and get attacked in the way that I did, and how to deal with it, and how to actually come out of such situations. I actually want them to be in an empowered situation rather than confused, which I was. Lastly, I also believe that we need to tell our stories. If we don't, it gets distorted beyond measure.
Yes.
Today, if you Google my name, all kinds of blind articles come up, which have, which source their statements from unregistered University of Oxford student societies. There are 3 unregistered societies, and they put out a joint statement against me, and that was paraded around by mainstream media as the official statement by the University of Oxford. You could also claim to be the Puducherry Club of Oxford and put out a statement, and if it towed the line that they were trying to tow, they would still platform it. So it's how ridiculous the logic is, the kind of the sources are, but it's still out there in the mainstream. So what I did is I just compiled all of the letters, all of the emails, all of the correspondences. I didn't give my opinion. I just literally let the story write itself by just putting together a sequence of what happened. And I think the first chapter is Oxford is not ready for a Hindu president. Oxford students are not ready for a Hindu president. And it's not something I'm saying due to my experience. It's what a history faculty said. So I'm literally quoting them and letting people see the story write itself. So it's just, I think, an attempt on my end to really put out the truth, give people a chance to really know what happens behind the curtains and what the other side of things are, so that they have that, overall picture and that entire, image which the West has been peddling to the East in the name of modernity, which is basically a colonial supremacist thought. That breaks, and that we are more comfortable in our own skin, our own heritage, and what we have in this beautiful country.
What's in store for you next?
Well, I think plenty of things. For starters, I think this book, it's something that I want to take to as many people as possible. And we're taking the proceeds from this, all the author proceeds to charities, so associate with maybe some beautiful charities. I'm trying to build my own non-profit foundation as well along the sides that can do some sizable, academic work in this field. And lastly, I think professionally, I do run a company, and I would also, work more towards my professional goals in that region, because I truly believe that the money and your like sustenance needs to come from another source, and that all of this needs to happen independently. So I'm trying to juggle many things, and I think I'm 24, so it's okay for me to have give life the benefit of doubt so as to what is to come, and maybe we'll know in a couple of years where I land.
Yes, thank you for that, Rashmi. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ajit. Thank you for having me.